Chapter 5, the professional liability of real estate licensees. Learning objectives. 1. Provide examples of the 3 types of trespass and explain the 3 major characteristics of that tort. 2. Explain who can sue for trespass. 3. List the defenses to trespass. 4. Explain what remedies are available to the victim of trespass. 5. Describe private nuisance. 6. Compare nuisance and trespass. 7. Discuss the significance of the occurrence of physical damage in an action for nuisance. 8. Name who is liable for a nuisance. 9. Describe the valid defenses to nuisance and be able to give examples of 2 or 3 excuses that are not valid defenses. 10. Explain what remedies are available to the victim of nuisance. 11. List the 3 elements of negligence and give an example of a negligent act which might arise in a real estate licensee's daily activities. 12. Discuss the principle of vicarious liability and its significance to real estate licensees. 13. List the elements of negligent misrepresentation and give an example of this tort. 14. Describe the tort of deceit and distinguish between deceit and negligent misrepresentation. 15. Describe the liability of an occupier at common law to each category of entrant upon land. 16. Explain how the Occupier's Liability Act has altered the common law and give an example of how a real estate licensee might incur liability under the Occupier's Liability Act. Question 27. In order for a trading services rep to be liable for a negligent misrepresentation, certain facts must be proven. You got to prove it. Which of the following is not a requirement for establishing a claim based upon a negligent misrepresentation? And the answer is 1. A contractual relationship must exist between the rep and the person to whom the representation is made. That's not a requirement for negligent misrepresentation. There doesn't necessarily have to be a contractual relationship. These other things do exist, which is a statement may be one of fact or an opinion given by the rep. The statement must be reasonably relied upon by the other person, and then damage results, and then the rep has not made a disclaimer. So the answer to this is not a requirement. A contractual relationship must exist between the rep and the person to whom the representation is made. That's not true. Not a requirement. Doesn't have to be a contract. 69, my favorite number. In answer to the ringing of her doorbell, Kim opened the front door of her house to find a door-to-door vacuum salesperson on her doorstep. Whew. Better than finding a JW or a Vinny. The salesperson walked into Kim's house uninvited. Before Kim could stop him, he dumped some dirt onto her carpet for use in a demo of the vacuum cleaner he was selling. The dirt stained Kim's carpet. Her lawyer correctly advises Kim that 1. The salesperson may be liable in negligence for the damage he caused to the carpet. Yes. Salesperson may be liable for negligence for the damage he caused to the carpet. What a complete hole. 76. Geeta was out walking and saw a for sale sign on the lawn of a house called Green Acres. She decided to ask the owners about the price of the property. Unknown to Geeta, the owners of Green Acres were away on a long vacation in Jamaica. As Geeta was walking across the lawn of Green Acres, a long branch from an old tree which grew in a neighboring yard fell down and hit her. As a result, Geeta broke her leg and couldn't return to work for 2 months. What's the following statement is true? Wow, what a story, Geeta. And the answer is 4. None of the above is true. And what are these none of the above things are true? What are they? Well, 1 is Geeta can sue the owners of Green Acres for her lost wages only if she can prove that they knew of the answer of the presented by the old cheats. No, that's not true. Owners of Green Acres are not liable to because they are not home at the time of the accident. That's also not true. And only the owners of the tree are liable to for her lost wages. That's also not true. These all things are bullshit. 107. Which of the following actions would constitute trespass to land? And the answer is 4. All of the above. And those 3 things are cross another person's property by mistake, you deliberately cross another person's property, or you throw an item upon a person's property. All of those constitute trespass. 138. A private nuisance involves some use of a person's own property, and the answer is 3, which interferes with the use and enjoyment of or cause damage to the property of another. So that's called private nuisance. If you stop me from enjoying my property, or you you damage my property, that is a private nuisance, asshole. And then we've got this beauteous 150. Karen's neighbor Jack is a gas barbecue enthusiast who cooks 2 meals a day, 7 days a week, on his outdoor gas barbecue, and he must be weighing 400 pounds. As a result, the smoke fumes and even ashes from charred meats are carried onto Karen's property, where they interfere with her use and enjoyment of her backyard. The barbecue smoke has discolored Karen's dining room curtains and killed her rare Japanese shrubs. So she takes out a shotgun and does Jack in. Problem solved? No. The answer is following statement. Which of the following statements are true? And the answer is 1. Only B and C are true. And what are B and C? B is, if Karen chooses to sue Jack for negligence, she must prove that he has breached the standard of care owed to her by a reasonable person in Jack's situation. So you got to prove it. What? Is that true? Let's see. Jack is probably liable to Karen for a private nuisance, and Karen may seek an injunction to prevent Jack from continuing the nuisance. Yes, that is true. Well, why the hell is B true? 150. Yeah. So if she sues him for negligence, she must prove. What do you mean negligence? Is he a... Okay, anyways, whatever, that's what the answer says. Sounds kind of weird, but... 170, David Jones being sued for creating a nuisance. He makes the following arguments. 170. And the answer is, which of the following is a valid defense to lawsuit? B and D. B and D. B, the damage he's created is trifling and of little consequence. Yes, if he can prove it. And D, the activity is authorized by statute and cannot be carried on without creating a nuisance. What? He's being sued for creating it. He makes the following arguments. Okay, and the answer is 170. The answer is 3. B and D. B is the damage he's created is trifling and of little consequence. I can get that. The activity is authorized by statute and cannot be carried on without creating a nuisance. That's contradictory. That's fucked up. Anyways, there must be something wrong with that question because it just doesn't make sense unless my brain's not working right now. 233. Which of the following actions would constitute a trespass? And the answer is 2. John is on a museum tour and wanders off through a door stating no admittance. That's called trespass. And that is very serious. He wanders through a door stating no admittance in a museum tour. Bad boy 291. Hurston, an employee of XYZ Preservatives Limited, is in the habit of venting a cloud of highly toxic gas into the air at dusk every evening. Why? Once it escapes, the cloud usually drifts over Ralph's apple orchard. Hurston's actions are strictly against company policy, but by venting the gas, Hurston saves time. Hurston is aware that the gas is highly toxic. Ralph has discovered that the emissions have destroyed his apple crop. Which of the following statements is true? And the answer is 2. Ralph may be successful in a claim against XYZ based on the principle of private nuisance. And that is true. Yes, he could be successful, maybe, in a claim against XYZ for private nuisance based on this Hurston asshole's behavior. 372. Charlie Brown and his sister Sally moved in next door to the house owned by Lucy Van Pelt. Every afternoon, Lucy's friend and tenant Schroeder, a concert pianist, would practice on the Van Pelt grand piano. Unfortunately, Sally, who works night shift, was a very light sleeper and was unable to sleep during Schroeder's rehearsals. At Sally's request, Charlie explained to his new neighbor that the piano playing caused Brown house to vibrate and Sally could not sleep. Lucy just replied, "Too bad," and slammed the door on Charlie's face. Which of the following statements is true? These goddamn Charlie Brown people. It's 3. In order to be successful in private nuisance suit, Charlie and Sally must prove that they have either suffered some interference with the use and enjoyment of or physical damage to their property. So something they cannot enjoy the property. They got to prove for private nuisance that their enjoyment of the property has been diminished or there's been some damage. 397, and the answer is 2. Which of the following statements regarding the law of occupiers' liability in BC is true? 2. The common law distinction between an invitee and a licensee may still be relevant under the Occupiers' Liability Act. Okay, so we've got the previous law, the common law, and that common law used to distinguish between somebody invited to a house and a real estate trading services rep. So that former distinction of common law may still be relevant under the Occupiers' Liability Act, the new one. And that's true. 397, too. 420. Which of the following is not a remedy available for private nuisance? And the answer is 3, specific performance. If you got a private nuisance, you can't ask them to do specific performance, and I think specific performance is usually positive. And private nuisance basically is to stop doing negative things. And the 3 things that are remedies are abatement, damages, and injunction. Abatement, damages, and injunction, but not specific performance. No, that's the answer to 240. It's 3 specific performances, not remedy. 431. At common law, which of the following statements is true regarding the liability of an occupier? And the answer is 1. An occupier of land owes a duty to an invitee to take reasonable precautions to protect the invitee from any unexpected dangers or hazard on the land of which he or she is aware or ought to be aware. So if you occupy land, like either by owning or renting, if you've invited somebody, you've got to take reasonable precautions so that they don't get injured. Okay? If you don't do that, in common law, you will. And 468, the duty of care imposed by the Occupiers' Liability Act does not apply to 1, risks willingly accepted by a person as his or her own risks. So basically, if you take some risks, you do something at your own risk, the duty of care does not apply to you. Yeah. Which of the following, 497, which of the following statements about the law in BC governing occupiers' liability are true? 497, and the answer is 3. B, C, and D. What are B, C, and D? B, C, and D. B, under the statute, there can be more than one occupier of land at the same time, obviously. C, the occupier's liability does not extend to risks willingly assumed by a visitor as his or her own risk. So, for example, somebody just, climbs onto the roof. Hey, that's their risk, their problem. D, the language of the Occupiers' Liability Act would probably allow for the imposition of a lesser standard of care to be owed to a trespasser than to a person with permission to be on the premises. And that is also true. If somebody's trespassed, hey, there's less liability. I mean, the less, a standard of care. So those B, C, and D are true. 502, trespass is 2, actionable per se. Trespass is actionable per se. 509, which of the following statements is true regarding the liability of an occupier under the common law of torts? So what's true regarding the liability of an occupier under the common law of torts? And the answer is 2. An occupier of land owes a minimal duty of care under the common law to trespassers and is required only to refrain from the intentionally harming them. Okay? So if you occupy land, you do owe minimal duty of care under the common law to trespassers. Okay, so I guess what does that mean? You can't make a Lego trap for them. And it's required only to refrain from intentionally harming them. So yeah, if there's a pit, you don't gotta cover it just because of trespassers. 536. Which of the following is a defense to a nuisance causing physical damage to property? And the answer is 1. The nuisance is the unavoidable result of statutorily authorized activity. So that is a defense. If it's an unavoidable result of some there's a statute authorizing some activity. That's the only way there can be a defense. 539. There is a large Olympic-sized pool in the backyard of the home Margaret owns in Coquitlam. Each week in the summer, a man from a pool maintenance company comes in and cleans the pool. Usually when he's cleaning the pool, the backwash ran over and chlorinated water leaked down on the garden of the neighbor below, killing the flowers. Both Margaret and the man from the pool company were aware of what was happening. This would be considered 2, a private nuisance. This is a private nuisance because the chlorinated water ran down from Margaret's pool and killed the neighbor's flowers. That's a private nuisance. Yeah, so there. 571. Hurston, the head of production at XYZ Preservatives Limited, has been ordered by the company's president in Toronto to vent some gases that have been stored in a pressure chamber at the Vancouver plant. Although the president knows that the gas is highly toxic, Hurston has been assured by the president that the gas is totally harmless and will quickly dissipate when released. Unfortunately, having escaped from the pressure chamber, the gas drifts in a dense cloud over Ralph's neighboring apple orchard and destroys the apple crop. Which of the following is true? And 2 is true. Ralph will probably succeed in a claim against XYZ based on negligence. That is still true. He'll probably succeed in a claim against XYZ based on negligence, despite Hurston not knowing what the hell he's doing. And page 9. Mark, an experienced real estate licensee, showed a home in Lions Bay to John, who was a first home buyer. John asked Mark whether the house had termites. It was located in forested area, and John told Mark that he was afraid that this location might have termite infestation problems. Mark told him that there were no termite infestation problems in the house. After the sale was completed, John discovered that the house did have a serious termite problem, which would cost a considerable amount to repair. On what grounds might Mark be liable to John in a lawsuit? And this answer to 615 is 3. Negligent misrepresentation. Negligent misrepresentation, because Mark, he's experienced, he should have told the truth. Idiot. 708. 708. In order for a licensee to be liable for damages caused by a negligent misstatement, certain facts must be proved. These include that the licensee making the statement, the answer is 2. A, B, C, and E are required. So everything but D and F. Okay. So these things, all right, these things got to be proven. Licensee making the statement. Sorry, this is A, did so in the course of business. B, did not qualify or disclaim the statement. C, knows or should have known that the advice was relied upon. And E, must have special expertise in the area on which the advice was given. So it was done in the course of business. There was no disclaimer. They know that the advice was going to be relied upon, and that person has special expertise in that area. 719. A visitor enters an apartment building to visit a tenant. As he enters the lobby, the skylight above collapses, injuring the visitor. Wow. Should be in a movie. Any lawsuit resulting from the above injury will be covered by, the answer is 2, third-party liability insurance. So visitor enters a apartment building, and goes in the lobby, skylight collapses, injures the visitor. So this will actually be covered by third-party liability insurance, number 2. And the next question is 769. Howard slipped on a patch of ice and broke his ankle when he walked up Laura's driveway to deliver a package. As a result, he suffered loss of wages until he recovered. So which of the following statements may be true? And the answer is 2. Only B is true. And what is B? If Laura has taken reasonable precautions, such as applying sand or salt regularly to prevent ice building up on the driveway, she will not be liable to Howard under the Occupier's Liability Act. So basically, you're safe if you throw sand or salt on your driveway. If you don't, and somebody gets injured, you are liable. 845. Larry's a real estate licensee. During negotiations for the sale of a property with a well water system, the buyer asked how reliable the water source the well was. Larry, relying only on information from the seller, he told the buyer that the well was reliable and supplied sufficient water for normal domestic uses. After completion of the sale, the buyer discovered that the water available was completely inadequate for domestic purposes because of a serious water shortage problem, known to occur every year in the area. Which of the following statements is true? For 845, the answer is 4. None of the above are true. So what are the above? Larry's not liable to the buyer in negligence because he exercised reasonable care and skill under the circumstances. No, he didn't. The seller doesn't owe a duty of disclosure of this defect, annual water shortage, to the buyer. Wrong. And the seller, 3, is not liable to anyone for misrepresentation because he's not a real estate professional. What? That's also wrong. None of these statements are true. 4. 876. Which of the following could a defendant use as a defense to a claim of negligence against him? And the answer is 3. The damage suffered by the plaintiff was not reasonably foreseeable by a person in the defendant's position. So, for example, there's an open house. Somebody walks in and, let's say that the cat jumps on the table and knocks over some spoons onto the ground, sort of the floor. And then somebody suffers an injury because of the spoons. So this is the defense that the person can do. They can say 3, the damage suffered by the plaintiff was not reasonably foreseeable by a person in the defendant's position. So maybe, for example, the spoons were way in the middle of the table or the counter, or they were actually in a holster, and the cat jumped up on top and knocked it over. And it was a stray cat. It wasn't actually So who would have known? 879. David Jones is being sued by a neighbor for creating a nuisance and causing damage to the neighbor's property. He advises you that 2. A, C, and D. A, he has taken the utmost care and exercised skill in carrying on the activity causing the nuisance. Let me see. And then C, he has authority under a municipal business license to carry on the activity. Yes. And D, he's using his property reasonably. So he's being sued for creating nuisance causing damage. But he says that he has taken utmost care and exercised skill in carrying on the activity causing a nuisance. He has authority under the municipal business license to carry on the activity. He's used his property reasonably. But if he says the damage is trifling, then fuck him. He's wrong. 902. Which of the following is not an element of the tort of negligent misrepresentation? And the answer for 902 is a contractual relationship between the parties. That, if there's a contract, then we don't have the tort of negligent misrepresentation. Okay, get that. So we got 908. 908. Which of the following statements under the occupier's liability concerning occupier's liability is false? And the answer is 1. Under the BC Occupier's Liability Act, the common law categories of visitor are explicitly retained. So that is false. We don't have those common law categories of visitor. They're not explicitly retained. Probably was under the common law before, but not when there was the BC Occupiers Liability Act. The other things are true. A common law and occupier owed a greater duty to invitees than to licensees. Merely warning children of danger may not necessarily meet the necessary standard. An occupier may be obliged to take positive steps to prevent injury to children on his property. There may be more than one occupier of premises at the same time under the BC Occupiers Laws. These things are all true. 945. Fletcher owns Lot 1, a rock-strewn beachfront property, to which he has added 1 ton of white sand imported from Aruba. Anna, owner of Lot 2, is Fletcher's neighbor. Lot 2 has a tennis court located near the beach. On windy days, the fine white sand on Fletcher's property is carried by the wind onto Anna's property, where it coats the clay surface of the tennis court, making it very slippery and hazardous for anyone playing there. Anna has discussed this problem with Fletcher on several occasions, but he has not done anything to prevent the problem from continuing. Anna has been unable to use her tennis court for several months as a result of the sand accumulating on the property. So, how do we fix this sandy problem? And the answer is 2, only B. And B this is an example of the tort of private nuisance. This is private nuisance, that bloody white sand from Aruba going onto the tennis court of Anna. 975. Which of the following statements is true? And the answer is 4. A licensee is not required to provide opinions to buyers on areas outside his or her expertise. Rather, it is the buyer's responsibility to seek the opinion of a qualified expert. So, for example, it could be a legal question, so they should seek a lawyer, or they should seek a geographical advisor, or a geologist, or whatever. So a licensee is not required to provide opinions outside the expertise. Page 13, question 987. Which of the following statements is false? And the answer is 3. With both trespass and nuisance, the plaintiff must prove interference with the use and enjoyment of the plaintiff's land and physical damage to the property. No. Not with trespass. It's only with nuisance, as far as I know. There you go. That's false. So trespass, you don't need to prove interference. 990, Eugene and Lenore visited Green Maple Tree Farms. The property is owned and operated by Rodney. Trees kept for sale are placed in holes in the ground, with their roots encased in burlap. The holes are not filled in when the tree is removed, yet are located in a grid pattern which is apparent to any viewer. Signs are located at the beginning and end of each row of trees, warning customers to watch for and avoid the open holes. Eugene and Lenore walked among the rows of trees while selecting a tree for their purchase. An open hole, approximately 3 feet in diameter, was noticed by them, in response to which Lenore walked around the hole, and Eugene attempted to step across the hole. Eugene fell into the hole and fractured his leg. Shortly after this event, Lenore tripped over a green garden hose lying unseen in the grass between the rows of trees, which was left by Rodney earlier in the day. Lenore broke her arm in the fall. Holy crap. Which of the following statements are true? And the answer is 3. B and C only, and B and C are, B is, Eugene will probably not recover any damages in a lawsuit against Rodney because he breached his duty to take reasonable care for his own safety. He was the author of his own demise, his own harm. And C, Lenore acted reasonably in avoiding the danger presented by the hole. Her injury from tripping on the garden hose was a direct result of the occupier's negligence. Therefore, she will probably succeed in a lawsuit against Rodney. So Lenore will succeed, but not Eugene. So the answer is B and C only, which is 3. And the next question is 991. Ethan visited a used car lot owned and operated by Clara. The lot contains a variety of used cars in addition to a marked off area where Clara keeps a variety of car parts. There are large signs around the marked off area warning customers not to enter the area without the presence of an employee. Ethan, while walking around the lot, noticed a set of vintage car wheels in the marked off area. Disregarding the signage, Ethan entered the area to get a closer look at the wheels. What an asshole. Unfortunately, Ethan stepped on a small engine part that was lying on the ground and slipped and broke his ankle. Which of the following statements is true? And the answer is 2. If Ethan was an infant, he would likely be owed a higher duty of care than an adult under common law because of an infant's relative inability to appreciate the danger presented by marked off areas in a used car lot. So if he were a kid, yeah, he'd be safe, but he's not. 999. Mimi was house sitting for her friends Tom and Lizzie while they were on a 3-month photo safari in Africa. The front porch was damaged in a freak storm that caused a tree to fall and smash the bottom 2 steps. Mimi didn't have the money to hire a carpenter to repair the stairs, so she attached a large sign to the bottom of the stairs reading, "Danger, keep off." Dave, an out-of-work handyman who could not read English, was walking from house to house in the neighborhood looking for casual work. He entered Tom and Lizzie's property, and not understanding the sign, started up the steps to the front door. Dave landed on the damaged step, and the weight of his body was more than the step could stand. He broke his leg in 2 places, and having no insurance, he ran up a $3,750 in medical bills. So he must have been somebody who was in Canada just visiting or something. Dave now intends to begin a lawsuit. Which of the following statements is false? Holy shit, false. 2. Dave will be unsuccessful in his lawsuit because he willingly accepted the risk of injury when he walked up the broken stairs. So that's false. All right. So the other ones are true, which is under the Occupier's Liability Act, both Mimi and absent owners qualify as occupiers. 3, the duty of care owed by an occupier under the Occupier's Liability Act applies in relation to the condition of the premises activity on the premises, or the conduct of third parties on the premises. And for a common law, an occupier owed a higher standard of care to invitees than was owed to licensees or trespassers. Those things are all true, but the thing that's not true, that is a lie, is 2, which is David will be unsuccessful in the lawsuit because he willingly accepted the risk of injury when he walked up the Brosnan stairs. But he can't read, so there you go. All right, everybody, I have done my duty. I have paid my dues. I have sat in this claustrophobic, no air bathroom, recording this for your ability to pass the test on the 20th.